Hello, fellow brothers and sisters, fellow Equatorians. This is Sabata talking to you. Yeah, I'm talking to you. You who is listening to what I'm saying right now. You know, if you want to understand yourself, if you want to understand how your inner conscience operates, basically how your inner conscience operates is that when you listen to any material information, you compile the information in your mind, and then what happens is your pre-existing principles that you live by analyze the material information that you have decoded, and then you come up with some conclusions with regards to the material information that you have decoded. Then you start to break down what's called understanding with respect to the information, whether the information that you have been provided or information that you have decoded in your mind serves you in what sense. So why am I saying this? I am saying this because I want to tell you that the principles that you live by, the principles that governs or guides you to decide acceptable and what is not acceptable, to decide right and wrong, to decide what is sinful and what is not sinful, to decide or to help you judge. Those guiding principles are very important in your life. And usually a principled person, once is groomed or baked into principles, utilizes those principles in order to judge right and wrong, sin and righteous, correct and not correct, acceptable and what's not acceptable. And you would always apply those principles, and your line of logic will be consistent. You will hardly compromise those principles. In other words, if somebody does something to me and I apply those principles to judge whether what has been done to me is right or wrong, I will apply the basic principle in every action that gets to be done to me uniformly. All right? The principle will not change if I'm a principled person. Unless I am not a principled person, unless I have not acquired enough principles to guide or to shape my behavioral traits, then I will always judge accordingly. That is, if Mr. X does for me something, I will not judge whether what Mr. X has done for me is right or wrong by the application of that principle, but I will judge it based on what my relationship is with Mr. X or Mrs. X. If the relationship between Mrs. X or Mr. X with me is close, then whatever Mrs. or Mr. X has done to me, I will always consider it to be good. All right? That I will consider it to be good. But then if the same thing that Mr. X or Mrs. X, if the same thing that Mr. or Mrs. X has done to me has been done by somebody else, then I would conclude that what has been done to me is bad. So I'm not basically applying that principle to decide on what has been done to me, whether it's good or bad, but I'm basically deciding on who has done this unto me. That means I am not principled, but a person who is principled would always apply the same line of logic. All right? If I'm a principled person, I will always apply the same line of logic to decide what is right and what is wrong. If Mr. or Mrs. X has done this to me and I consider this to be something that is unacceptable, that action will be considered unacceptable to me by anybody who does the same thing. Anybody who does the same thing to me, irrespective of what our biological relationship is. Okay? Now, the biological relationship factors in a way such that if I choose to just favor the person with whom I have a biological relationship, I will just choose to keep quiet and not say to that person that, hey, what you have done to me is unacceptable, or is wrong, or is sinful. I would just choose to keep quiet, but that does not mean that I don't realize that it is unacceptable. But if the same thing is done by somebody with whom I do not have a biological relationship, then I could just approach that person and say, hey, dude, why did you do A, B, C, D? Okay? I've just chosen to confront that person. Maybe it's just because we don't have a biological relationship. But the fact that I will consider it unacceptable the same way this act has been unacceptable when it was conducted to me by somebody with whom I have close relationship will always remain the same. You see, this is how a person with principle lives. All right. So, what's the point of even saying what I'm saying right now? The point of saying what I'm saying right now, fellow brothers and sisters, is that it's always good to be principled. It's always good to arrive at that moment sometimes to just meditate and think by yourself and try to apply some of those moral principles that you have always been baked in, to sometimes judge on material information here and there that you have consumed in order to judge what is right and wrong. All right? I'm saying this because I'm noticing that most of our Equatorians are principally kind of strangely baked. You see, I come across a lot of individualistic situations where a clear action that constitutes sinful act, or sometimes acts that are not righteous, that can easily be judged as unacceptable, but then gets to be supported either by people who are related to the individuals who are conducting those actions. And pretty much those who support actions that can just be perceived unacceptable by some basic principles, those who support those kind of actions, simply maybe because the actors of those actions are related to them, those people are toxic in the health of our society, because they are not baked in principles, so at least they apply those principles randomly when actions that are unacceptable are implemented by their relatives. It's fine, so long as the effect of those actions don't harm them but harm others. It's fine with them. So it's like we're living together in association with each other, but if this person with whom I don't have any problem does something else that harms somebody else, I'm okay with it. Not only okay with that, I will even support. Brothers and sisters, in order to build a healthy society, in order to build a healthy association amongst ourselves, that should not be the way we should interact or engage with each other. I'm encouraging you to build yourself in principles. When you go to the church on Sundays and you listen to teachings and you learn the principles that Christianity has taught to us in life, let you be baked on those principles. Let you be shaped on those principles, so that those principles will then help your behavioral trait. Those principles will be reference guides to help you process what is right and wrong, what is sin and what is not sin, what is righteous. And then if you choose to live a righteous life, then you'll always use those principles to filter out acceptable and what is not acceptable, and apply them uniformly. Don't apply them biasly. Allow prejudice not to play, so that we can build a healthy society, peaceful society. Thank you very much. God bless you.